Hello and welcome. I am Arumba. Thank you for joining me. So, I am ready to get back into some more Dwarf Fortress. I took a break between the last video and this, so you can see my little launch setup. So I've got 4 buttons, got Quick Fort, Soundsense, Dwarf Fortress, and Dwarf Therapist. These are the main utilities that you need to run the game and really enjoy it, I think. So I always fire up Soundsense first, followed by Dwarf Fortress. I usually wait for these two until they're necessary. Dwarf Therapist is just, it's a very, very useful utility, but you don't always need it. So we should be ready to go. We're going to continue playing. I only have the one save, so that's all we have. Now we're right back where we were left off. So let's talk about the interface. Again, like in the embark screen, we have 3 sections to this. We have an extended out map view. This is very similar to that mid-level view we saw on the embark screen. And this is the main game view screen. I almost never use this because the map is small enough on a 4x4 embark that you don't really need to be able to see this, and since it's consolidating 4x4 tiles into a smaller section, it leaves detail out. It can be useful to try to get a lay of the land, like you can see here, like, you know, there's forest over there, right? We can go over here, yep, that's forest. You can kind of see broad strokes of what the map mode looks like. But in general, I don't like to use it, so you can get rid of it by pressing tab. That'll just consolidate this into both sections. Press tab one more time to push this all the way to the right, and if you don't need this, after you've mastered the key bindings, you can just press tab again to get rid of it. However, every single time you pull up something like the build menu, it's going to be there anyway, which kind of, like, you might be thinking, oh, I'll build right here. Oh wait, now I've got to change my view. So I find probably the best way to do it is just tab, tab, tab until you've got the menu over there, and then that way it's always there and you've got a nice, useful screen. Now let's say that this is the first time you've ever played the game before, and like I just did, you've pressed some buttons, you've zoomed around, and now you're like, where the heck are my dwarves? I can't even find them again. Just press F1. F1 is a zoom key binding. Where are we at? Right. Hotkeys. So zoom, by default, F1 is always set to your embark location, which is going to be the wagon, which is right here. It's this little 3x3 section. So if you ever do get zoomed away, you press F1, you go right back to where you started. Now you can change that by pressing Shift H for capital H, hotkeys, and then it's calling it gate, zoom F1. If we wanted to make another one, say we're down here, we just go down to the hotkey number 2. What am I missing? Oh, I'm sorry. So once you're where you want to go, you just press the associated hotkey. You've got F1 through F8, Shift F1 through Shift F8. So let's say I want to make F2 down here. I press F2 and then I press Z for zoom here. It gets highlighted, letting me know that that is an active hotkey. You can reuse the hotkey by going somewhere else and then pressing the Z key again. If you want to, you can press the N key to rename it. So you could name it like forward post or something, but there is a character limit, so let's just name it back hotkey 2. So yeah, we got F1, F2, F1, F2. Follow me so far? Okay. This first video is going to mostly be about interface type stuff. I have to do it just in case I know that there are going to be some people who've never experienced Dwarf Fortress watching this series. If you are an avid Dwarf Fortress player, I still suggest that you watch it because I have a very high attention to detail when I take my time, and there's a pretty good chance I'm going to tell you about some stuff you might not know. So let's talk about what we're looking at. Right now, it is still cold. This whitish sand-looking thing is actually snow, and it's early autumn, or excuse me, early spring, so we're just exiting winter. Based on the location that I embarked to, we'll probably see all of this snow melt soon. So if we zoom down one Z layer and we look at this tree and click on it, see how at the top right corner it says us. It's a snow-covered larch, a pile of snow. It's telling me that there's snow on all of these places. All I had to do to get that menu to pop up is just left click on the tree. And since we're using that mouse follow the X is following my mouse, so you can kind of just move it around that way. If you are hovering over it and you don't have that menu open, you can still see what's going on over here. Press F1, we'll get back to our embark spot. Let's just go through all of these menu options, just for the sake of completion. So A, view announcements. Anytime something major happens, like somebody is, an outpost liaison has arrived, or a siege has begun, autumn has changed, whatever, a season has changed, this will pop up. You can press A to pull up your announcement screen. There is a search bar. Just by pressing S, you can search for specific announcements and isolate them from all the rest. That's an addition that's not in regular Dwarf Fortress, so you can thank the guy who, I think his name is Falcone. He made a lot of the interface adjustments that are really helpful. B is the build menu. This is where you can build all of the different items that there are. The mouse wheel will scroll through this list. If you don't want to use the mouse wheel, you can also use the plus and minus key on your keypad to cycle through them, or you can use the associated key binding on the right. These ones are capitalized, these ones are not. Eventually, if you're used to playing with a keyboard, you'll probably know most of them from memory. Like if I want to just go build depot, I know that it's B capital D. If I want to build a bed, it's BB. BD is build a door, etc. Some of them are not quite as intuitive though, like a well is L, bridge is G. I mean, yes, there's the letter G in the name, but it's not the primary letter, so to speak. So, so that's that menu. Now, one thing I want to cover in here is that there are some of these items that are directly built from the menu, like floodgate, floor hatch, wall grate, floor grate. They're all built directly from this menu. But there's actually a couple of these that are sub-menus. So if we go down to workshops, that's going to bring up a whole nother sub-menu. So if you're ever trying to build something and you can't find it, consider whether or not it's actually in a sub-menu and not on the main menu. So we've got Leatherworks, Quern, Millstone Loom, Clothier's Shop, etc. Press Escape to go back up one level. The other one that we've got is Furnaces, is another sub-menu. Which is the shortcut E. We've got a wood furnace, a smelter, glass furnace, and a kiln. And I believe that is just about it for the two main sub-menus. Actually, no, there's also this one, the wall, floor, stairs, track. There's another sub-menu in here. Machine components. And I think we're about there. We'll probably end up talking about each of those at some point. C allows you to view civilizations. So we are Nizgak Fikod, which is the Frosty Glaze. That is our Dwarven civilization. That's the only civilization that we are currently aware of. As we get trading happening and hostile sieges and things, like with goblins, they will show up on the civilization list and we'll be able to kind of see our relationship with them. Don't really worry about this very much. In general, goblins will hate you, your dwarves will like you. It's that pretty simple. Next we're down to designations, D. Designations is kind of how you see, with this game, you don't have direct control over your dwarves. You can't tell them, well, let me be more clear, I guess. You can tell each individual dwarf to do a very specific job, but it takes a lot of control and understanding to make that happen. In general, you don't have any control over what they do. You just kind of say, those trees over there, they should be chopped down. Those plants, anybody should go and chop those, get those plants. I think it'd be a great idea if you guys were to dig out a cavern here, and assuming that the dwarves have the enabled laborers, they'll go and do it. But you're more like you're the mastermind behind it. You don't tell them specifically, like, I want this dwarf to do this, and this dwarf to do this, and this dwarf to do this. It's not like that. It's more of a city management type game. So the designations menu is where you actually designate what should happen. Like if I want to mine, I'd press D, and then I could click, and I'm saying dig a tunnel. And then I want you to dig it from there to there, and then I want it to go north, and then I want you to dig some sub-rooms like this. Right? So that's what I want you guys to dig out, and dig a door here and here, and some doors there and there. How's that look? Okay, but let's say I change my mind. We've also got some other options like X, which is remove designation, I can say, never mind, I changed it. I don't want to do that anymore. Or carve track, which is for minecarts. Fortifications, which is for up on like ramparts if you want to have things that your dwarves can shoot through. Smooth out stone, construct ramps, downward ramps, stairways, etc. Channel allows you to dig through Z layers. And so we'll experiment and play with those in due time. Next we have the unit list. Unit list provides you with a list of all the units that we know of. All units on the map. So we've got four tabs to it. The Citizens tab, which is your dwarves. They have their actual name, and then this right here tells you what their primary profession is. Right now they're all called peasants because they don't have any skills. That's because of the way that I embarked. If I embarked with someone who's a good miner, it would say Stukos Segunotstus Miner. Does that make sense? Good. From here we can press V to view the creature. C will allow us to zoom to that creature's location. If it's a building or the creature's like somewhere in the building, B will zoom to the building. M brings up your manager interface. We need to actually appoint a noble, a manager, before we can use the manager interface. We can manage labors by using DFHack. I don't recommend you do this. This is if you don't use Dwarf Therapist. You can manage labors from within the game itself by using DFHack, but it's not as good as Dwarf Therapist. So just pretend like I didn't show you this. It doesn't exist. S can let you search. So if I want to find a specific dwarf, you press S, then type their name. Let's say I'm looking for Asmel, A-S-M-E-L, A-S-M-E-L, and for some reason it doesn't always filter properly, and it might just be because of the dwarven name type thing. Or no, he's still there. I'm sorry, I'm just missing it. Asmel right there. Yep, good. So you can filter out and only show certain dwarves. If we press the right mouse button, or the right keyboard button, excuse me, right arrow, we can shift to the next tab and look at the pets and livestock. These are all the animals that we brought. If there are other animals, they're going to show up on the others list. There are no other creatures nearby, so we might find like foxes and bears and lions and whatever. Dead and missing is for all units, whether they were hostile or your own. So if you have dead dwarves, they're going to show up in the dead or missing list. No one has gone missing or died. The year is still young. They're letting you know, don't worry, people will die. And trust me, they will. Despite your best efforts, you will lose people. Military is more complicated than we're going to cover in this section. But suffice to say, this is how you control the military of your fortress. We'll cover this in greater detail soon. N, capital N rather, is points, routes, and notes. Now, this is essentially a system that you can use to create patrol routes for your dwarves to defend. You can also use it to create like systems to move goods around on minecarts. You can use it to kind of have your dwarves path in specific ways if you want them to. But again, we'll use this a little bit later when we really need to worry about routes. W is burrows. Burrows are basically, see, this is hard to make it. It's hard to make this game sound simple. A burrow is a zone, and it's a zone that I'm able to define that's specific to my dwarves. So I can basically say that this burrow represents everything that's outside, and then I can have a second burrow that represents everything that's inside. And then if we're under attack, I can say, okay, all dwarves report to the inside burrow, meaning don't go outside. Does that make sense? Like I'm restricting them to a certain section. You can also use this for finer control, like I want this one dwarf to go into this one small burrow where his workshop is and his bed and food are, and just live there. I'm going to lock him in the room and let him, he can't leave, he has to stay there and work on damn toys. Make some goblets. That's kind of something I like to do quite often, actually. Slave labor. But, yeah, so this is how you can tell individual dwarves what to do, but for most players, you're not going to really get that in-depth with it. Okay, we're next down to stockpiles. Stockpiles is how you tell dwarves where to put stuff. You've got animal stockpiles, furniture, corpses, stone, gems, cloth, ammo, finished goods, weapons, armor, food, refuse, wood, bars and blocks, leather, coins, and armor. And you can actually make combination stockpiles as well. So for instance, let's say I want to make a stockpile into an animal stockpile, and I plant it right there. Okay, so they're going to put animals there. Not live animals, because live animals are units. They're going to put animals that are in traps in this stockpile. So I click on it, and then I go up here. I'm just looking, I'm showing you where to look. Up here, I'm going to press the S key to change settings. And here's where it's defined as a animal stockpile. See how that's kind of a brighter white than these gray items? So it's an animal stockpile, and these are the types of animals that I want you to put in it. See here where it says U and J, empty cages and empty animal traps? If I press U, that gets darker. So right now, this animal stockpile is essentially going to hold empty cages, empty animal traps, and full traps that contain these animals. That's what an animal stockpile does. But just for argument's sake, let's say I wanted to make this stockpile also hold some coins. I could go down to coins, I could press E for enable, and then these coins are now allowed to be placed in that stockpile too. There's nothing that says you can't have a stockpile that accepts everything. But in general, you want to have specialized stockpiles to maximize efficiency and organization. So that's something about that. In a later episode, I am going to go into quite a bit of detail with QuickFort. This is something that is phenomenal. I'll show you how you can create macros that will automatically designate a stockpile to be very, very specific so that you can just do it one time and never have to worry about resetting it. Like, for example, let me give you, I really get excited about this. Let's say that I wanted to make a seed stockpile. So we're going to disable all, and then we'll go to food, enable food, and let's say I wanted to make this into just a seed stockpile for outdoor plants. Right? I'm going to press B to block everything, and then I'm going to go down to seeds, right here. I'm going to press P for permit seeds, and then I'm going to go over here. Actually, let's say, let's forbid seeds, and then we'll go over here, and let's say that I just want a couple different seeds, like plump helmet spawn, pigtail, like these ones, and then see how it's like I've got these random different seeds. The problem is that every single time you fire up a new fortress and you want to create that stockpile to hold your outdoor seeds, you've got to go through and do it again, which is annoying. So we'll be able to use QuickFort soon to automate this process. So you really just have to do it one time. So, alright. But that was just a sample stockpile, so we'll click on it, press X. Excuse me, that's not true. We'll press P for stockpiles, X for remove designation, click and click to get rid of that stockpile. Okay, so we are down to stockpiles. Set building tasks preferences Q. You're not going to really need to use the Q button very often because with mouse query, if you click on a building, it automatically pulls up that menu. So for instance, if I press Q and I move the mouse here, see how it says in the top right corner, remove building and escape? Okay. Now, not pressing Q, if I just click on the building, it pulls up the same menu. So mouse query kind of removes the necessity for a couple of these buttons. T is view items in buildings. So I've clicked on it and it's selected the view rooms buildings. If I click on it again, it's going to cycle to the next one, which is view items in buildings. So the wagon is technically considered a building. Don't ask me why. It's supposed to be a wagon, but it's a building. So this building holds all of these items. I can use the mouse wheel to scroll through them. These are the items that we have in the building. All the stuff that we brought. We've got these meat barrels, willow logs. You'll see this list should be familiar to you because we just picked it all. We've got all the rum and some picks. Okay. Next we've got view units. Same thing. If I click on a unit, like a dwarf here, that's the view units button. If I also press the K key, that is this look. So the mouse actually takes over the necessity for T, V, K, etc. Capital R actually brings up a list of all the buildings that are there. I don't really use that very often. Z for status. This shows you the status menu. So we've got our stores, how many dwarves we have. There's 32 animals on the map. We have 7 peasants. We can see a list of how many of these types of dwarves that there are. And they actually have their own little icon, depending on what their main profession is. We don't have a broker, so we can't see how much wealth we've created. And we also need a broker to see how much trading we've done. Since I don't have an appraiser, or a bookkeeper rather, I can't see how much food we have. I just know that there's maybe 200. You know, the dwarves are looking at the wagon and saying, I don't know, ooh, there's food over there. I think we got some. And so that's good. Kitchen is the next menu over. You have to cycle through it and then press enter. The kitchen shows basically all of the different types of food that we have, and then I'm able to set permissions. Are they allowed to cook it? Are they allowed to brew it? So I do want to do something real quick before I forget, which is to tell them to not cook the milk, because we're going to turn the milk into cheese. Also, I don't want them to cook the beer and ale. I want them to drink it. And I don't want them to cook the plump helmets, because cooking plump helmets destroys the seeds. I want them to brew the plump helmets into ale, and then I want to use the seeds that you get from brewing to plant more. In a pinch, you can eat plump helmets, but I don't want them to cook them. Cave lobster, they can cook all this crap, sure. No, you can't cook the plump helmet spawn. You can actually cook with seeds, but I don't want to do that. Everything else, though, we can cook. That's fine. In order to change it, I was pressing C and B to toggle. Okay, if we want to go into the stone menu, we can see the different types of stone that there are. The red ones are restricted for use by the listed tasks, meaning that, just think of it like this. Fancy stone can only be used for fancy stuff. Like, you're not going to take a very valuable piece of stone and use it to create a copper ring, or like a ring, a toy ring or whatever. You can actually control it here. Like, maybe I do want them to make some obsidian toys. I could press enter to make obsidian usable for other items. But instead, we're just going to leave it as it is. Yep. Until you know what you're doing, you're probably not going to have to mess with this. And then we got the stock menu. Excuse me, we got the stock menu over here. This is a full list of all the items that we have. We need a broker, excuse me, not a broker, a bookkeeper, before we can actually see exactly how much we have, unless it's under 10 units. If it's under 10, the dwarves can count that high. So we know we have 7 legwear. There's some honey badger leather trousers, some ibex leather trousers, dingo, and 4 pairs of pigtail fiber trousers. Fantastic. Each dwarf has pants. I'm glad to see that they brought pants with them. And then finally, we also have that first one, the animal stock menu. This is where we've got the list of all the animals that we have. From here, I can toggle a few things. I can toggle them for slaughter. I can say, I want you to go kill that horse. I can press enter to say that this animal is available to be adopted as a pet. I can make it so that a dwarf, if they really like horses, can make that horse their pet, which makes them happy. Dwarven happiness is pretty important, and we'll talk about it further later. Certain animals, like dogs, can be trained in the art of hunting and war. So notice here, H and W. It's not going to be available on all animals. I can't make a war lamb. I'd love to, or a war cat. That'd be funny. But like a dog, I can train the dog in the art of war. So if I press W, I'm saying that A and W is that he's set to be trained for war. A represents any trainer. If I want a specific trainer, I press T, and then I could pick a specific trainer if I have a trainer that's like a dwarf that's really, really good at training in the art of war. But I'm going to just press W and T for none, so that they don't have trainer. So we'll get into that a little bit further later. You can also press S to search and filter. So if I just want to search for dogs, there we go. Everything but dogs. And we're done with that menu. This video is going quite long. Okay, tab, move this menu map. We've covered that. Question mark brings up the help menu. You can read through this. There is documentation in here. It's not that useful in my mind. Movies is a really confusing term. When they say movies, they really mean macros. A movie means that you record something and then play it back. It's not like I want to record a video so I can put it on YouTube. It's I want to record a specific set of actions that I can then replay again. I use Quick Fort for that, so I've never used this Movies button. Finally, we've got Reports. This is combat logs for combat when people fight. O is Set Orders, so basic rules that the dwarves are going to follow, like dwarves gather plants, dwarves gather animals, dwarves gather food, dwarves gather furniture. One thing I like to turn off right away is actually, I'm going to just leave everything on for now, but you can control whether they are going to gather refuse or ignore it. We'll probably have to worry about that soon. Mix food. I don't like them to mix food. I'm going to change that. Mix food means that they would take all seeds and put them in a big bag. I want them to have separate bags. Workshop orders. Oh, that's all fine. Activity zone orders. Yeah, we'll forget about that. Okay. Job list. This is a big list of all the jobs that have to be completed and who is doing what. We haven't assigned any jobs. There are no jobs to be done. Haven't even unpaused the game yet, so nobody's done anything yet. Squads is where you... Squads and military, these two right here go kind of hand in hand. You set up groups of dwarves that fight in a squad, and then in the military menu, you equip them and tell them what their orders are. We'll cover those two together at a later date. Hauling is where we can create routes for minecarts and for just people to drag stuff around. Specific routes, we want them to move certain items from one place to another. I is for zones. A zone is different than a stockpile. A zone is where you specify, hey dwarves, this is where you can find water. This is where I would prefer for you to fish. This is where we're going to place the garbage. And that's, a garbage dump is different than a refuse stockpile. A refuse stockpile is where you place garbage. A garbage dump is where you dump items that I have specifically labeled as dump. So if I want them to just, take that item for whatever reason and just put it somewhere else, I can tell them to go dump it here. You also specify things like pen and pasture, pit pond. This is where you can find sand. This is where you can find clay. This is where you're supposed to meet when you have nothing to do. This is where the hospital is. This is where you should conduct animal training, etc. So just press X to get rid of that zone. H is hotkeys, we've covered. K we've covered. Escape is your options. Key bindings, if you want to change any key bindings, you go here, you go to General. You can change them yourself. It's not very intuitive, but you'll figure it out eventually. If you know what you're doing, you'll be able to find it. So we'll save and exit. And we're good to go. Now, there's one last button here. That thing is not very clear. That's a period. If you press the period button, you can advance 1 frame. So you can advance very, very slowly if you're like in the middle of a combat type situation and you want to really pay close attention to what's going on. So there's the quick, kind of quick, summary of the interface. Next, we'll start playing and get our dwarves indoors. So thanks for watching. See you again soon.